Welcome to Chasing the Upside, conversations about living the FPL life. Meera Pankhania, welcome to Chasing the Upside. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's early hours of morning over here in Australia. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, you need to be very much admired. It's 7 a.m. where you are, 9 p.m. where I am. So yeah, I got the good end of the deal, I think.
Yeah, I'm an early riser, so I really didn't mind.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for joining me. So I'd like to begin where it began for you and FPL. So what is your FPL origin story?
Oh gosh. So I'm really late to the party with FPL. I didn't actually start playing until about 3 years ago. So this is my third season of playing. And I had come across FPL previously. So born and brought up in the UK, huge football fan. I think, anyone who's brought up in the UK, it's hard to avoid football and everything that sort of comes with it as well. So I used to play a lot of football, as a kid as well. And my dad used to take me to the matches as well and attend my matches. So yeah, it was really nice to kind of have that positive kind of upbringing from a sporting sort of perspective as well. So I was aware of FPL as I was growing up in the UK. However, it didn't really sort of take my fancy in terms of like playing it at the time, and I think it was because it felt like it was too hard, and there was other things going on, so I just didn't really subscribe to it. I knew a couple of like my mates and in like school and college that were playing it as well, and yeah, again, I didn't really sort of want to get involved too much into it. I had to travel during the pandemic though in 2021, and so that was pretty tough because it was hard to leave the country at the time, and I managed to make it over to the UK, and the Euros were on, and so I got swept up into the Euros massively. England, all of it, the whole sort of the whole shebang that surrounds being in like a cup basically. Um, Anyway, so my family at the time were like, "Hey, so we're starting a family league for FPL," and I was like, okay, remind me what is the current version of FPL? So it sort of like hit my radar, maybe for the like the third or fourth time in sort of the time that I've kind of been following football anyway. And so yeah, I downloaded the app, and I think it was quite literally a day before I was traveling back to the to Australia where the deadline was. And so I pretty much very quickly had a look at some stats and stuff that was available to me from the fantasy football website itself, and picked a team. And yeah, that's how I got started. I had to have 2 weeks of hotel quarantine over here in Australia, and so those 2 weeks were the perfect time to get stuck into watching some of the matches because obviously I was in hotel quarantine for the first game week, and learn about FPL. So this was around the time I had no idea how to play the game, and I was playing chips left, right, and center, not really thinking about a strategy or anything like that. None of those things came to mind. But I had 2 weeks to learn, and that's when I started consuming some content and seeing what was out there. Hadn't even joined FPL Twitter, didn't know it existed. I was such a newbie to it. But it was probably the time that I learnt the most as well, like very quickly in the space of about 2 to 3 weeks. So having some of that downtime in hotel quarantine definitely helped.
So, so those 2 weeks then, you were coming at the game very fresh. So I presume the word template wasn't even a word that you knew,
No.
that you were just picking players. That must have been quite, looking back, quite freeing actually.
It was actually great. I had no idea, what a template team could look like either. And so, based on the players that I knew, so I was a little bit biased, as well. Like I'm fully aware of whenever I'm biased with Liverpool players, especially. And so I had Salah in the team, I had Trent Alexander-Arnold in the team, and I think up front, I can't remember. Maybe I'm pretty sure I had like three Liverpool players basically. Maybe it was Robertson at the back or something like that. But no, template picks wasn't something that I was aware of. I wasn't aware of a lot of the terminology either. In fact, I had to Google, FPL terminology and see, and I found a glossary on one of the websites, and so useful. There's not many websites out there now where they've got that sort of glossary type of information for complete newbies that are sort of understanding the sport, a little bit, well, understanding the game within the game. And so, yeah, it was very new. Yeah, very new.
That's an interesting way to put it, the game within the game, because I think that's something that I realized that, and the beautiful thing about the game is you can, if you don't want to consume any content, you can literally rock up at 11:30 on a Saturday, spend 30 seconds looking at who's injured and bring whoever's at the top of the points who are in, and then call it good, and then forget about it, and then just enjoy the Saturday afternoon. Or you can take it a step further, and put a bit of thoughts into it, or you can take it a bit step further and look into the data, consume content, and then there's this whole sort of community around it, and that the tiers of it, I think, is brilliant. And the moment I realized that, I thought, God, this is so much more than I ever thought was out there, which was quite exciting, I thought.
Yeah, and for someone like me who works in with a lot of data, whether it's qualitative or quant data, we do a lot of evidence-based delivery and design and digital kind of work. And so with that, data is really important. And so my natural tendency is to look at data. What is the data telling us? Whether it's again quant or qual data. And so, for me, the qual data is actually doing the eye test and looking at what, some of the how they're playing as a team, how is an individual player playing, and then playing as part of, being in the team itself, and then looking at some of the underlying stats, and then trying to sort of project, from there as well. So my natural tendency is to look at data. And so I had to actually push that out of my system a little bit more, because data isn't everything, and that's something that I've learned over the last couple of seasons. It wasn't something that I realized in my first season, but because my natural tendency was to look at the data, data was the go-to as a complete newbie approaching the game.
Where do you, I mean, you're probably a really good person to ask on this because you are so involved with data in your, day-to-day job. Where do you think data falls down in FPL? Where, yeah, where does it lack?
Um, I think a lot of it comes down to, data is it's pretty smart now. Like I think in the past it perhaps wasn't, where, you've got underlying stats, and we say sort of underlying stats, we look at things like okay, the last couple of seasons or how players have been playing, and some of those stats are then sort of reflected in whatever charts and data are available to us. And there's so many websites that have that information now. And I think, from that point of view, the data is really useful as a bit of a heat map, of these players are probably going to be fantastic with the very easy fixture run that is coming up. And with the combination of players that they are playing with as well, there's a high probability or high chance that certain players are going to do well, or be able to bang in a goal or an assist or whatever that might be. Where it falls over is just the contextual sort of environmental sort of aspects of what's happening as well. So we can predict some of these things, even now. Um, if there's an early kickoff and there's been an international break, there's players, especially the South American players, where they're a lot further away, or whether they've come over here in Australia as well. I think in the past there's been a couple of those scenarios as well. And so you can preempt some of these things and wonder that, okay, well, yeah, it's possible that these players will get back and they're going to be jet lagged and they're going to be exhausted. And I'm pretty sure there was someone in the community who was tracking someone's plane as well at some point. It was insane. I was like, wow, this is like pure dedication there. But then, I've got a flight tracker on my app as well, on my phone as well. So I was like, I wonder if I can do this as well. And I was like, no, 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 Mira, you're taking it all a step too far there. But there's a whole bunch of environmental sort of aspects that comes with it, psychological aspects that come, as part of that as well. And I think, data is really useful, from that point of view. However, it's not the be all and end all of the decision making process that you should be using. And so, it's the same in the type of work that I do as well. Like we use a lot of data to support um, I guess forming an understanding of the users or customers that we're designing services for or designing products for, and it's a similar sort of idea as well that yeah, it gives you a bit of contextual understanding of what's going on and, as a whole, that individual, but then, as a team, and then how that individual might be sort of feeling, thinking, going on, this is where like I think everyone puts the label of variance on there. However, I don't really like looking at it as sort of variance as such. I prefer looking at it as, well, that player just had an off day and, something like they got injured, or someone got a red card and therefore that player had to come off the pitch. And so I wouldn't say that data sort of falls over as such. I think data is there as a factual means to for us to sort of then interpret and do something with that. So I think this is where there is a bit of a fine line between this is the data, and there's lots of content creators out there that take data, very complex data, and present it in a very beautiful format and explain it in a very nice and kind of a consumable way. And I think based on that, there is a fine line between you should go for, when someone says you should go for this player based on this data, or where they just say, okay, this is what the data suggests, and then let that sort of person make a decision based on the data that's there in front of them, and therefore you own that decision as well. So I think there's a bit of a fine line or gray sort of area where data is supposed to be there as factual information for you to do something with.
I'm glad I asked that question because you summed that up perfectly. You can tell, you can tell you do that day in, day out. Yeah. And you even got, if anything explains the madness of the FBL community, it's
Yeah.
tracking players' flights.
Yeah, I know, it's wild.
That
Wild.
is incredible. That is lovely. So from the three or so years that you've been doing it, what do you enjoy the most about playing the game?
I've got to say the community actually.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed. So when I got back to eventually when I got out of hotel quarantine, I was living in Canberra at the time. Canberra's a very small capital city of Australia. I think there's only about 500,000 people living there, so it's not massive, at all. My first reaction was I need to find more people to talk to about this game, called FPL, and I didn't know many people. So I knew people that were following, the English Premier League in general, but not many people that were, playing FPL. And so that's when I discovered the Twitter community. It was actually my brother-in-law who mentioned, hey, there's this massive, Twitter FPL community. You might want to tap into that. Since then, fast forwarding to where we are, now, yeah, I feel like everyone's a bit of an integral member of that community as well, and we're running meetups and doing things a bit more sort of casually and sort of regularly as well, and it's so nice to just connect with a community that really enjoys playing FPL, and you can have very sort of deep conversations and very sort of light conversations about FPL and go and watch some of the games together as well. So I think for me, it's definitely been about the community and finding another hobby to basically play.
I suppose from an outsider looking in, if we're looking just at your ranks, so it was a really solid season considering it was your first season, and then you completely smashed it out of the park last season. You were sort of 2,000 or something ridiculous, was it?
Yeah, it was about 2.5K.
Two
Yeah.
and a half, about 2.5K. Yeah, you know exactly the number. Come on. And then this season it hasn't gone so well. So I suppose the question is this the first time in like over 2 years that you're questioning your decisions, or you're not finding it as potentially as simple as you once did because you haven't sort of faced this before? I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I do feel like I'm questioning my decisions a lot more. And I found in my first season, because I had pretty much done an auto pick type of thing and just changed, a lot of my team around. And, I finished in the top, I think it was 200K or so. I think it was like 180, 190 or something like that. I was really happy with that. But again, I don't really have an understanding of what good could look like as well. So for someone who was playing, like if you sort of work out what a benchmark is, what would my benchmark be for my first season? I hadn't really thought about it. I didn't really set a goal for my first season, and so it was very much about, yeah, let me just go ahead and do whatever I can do and have a lot of fun in this season and learn along the way. And so finishing where I did was I thought, a good achievement. In other people's perspectives, it was fantastic, and so for me, it was good. Other people thought it was great, and of course, I have to take that in mind as well, because they've got more experience than I have in playing FPL. Last season, though, I feel like I was able to put in a lot more energy and time before I started the season. So I was a little bit more prepared. I didn't have any travel or anything like that to sort of think about before the season started. So, having like a decent first season, I was able to put a lot more energy into sort of, preseason and having a look at what was going on in preseason as well. However, like in terms of like the team that I picked and where I ended up going, this season especially, um, I don't know. It's one of those things where, again, like if you ask me, is it good? Is it not good? I'm not too sure. It's one of those things where I had a really great start to the season last season. That doesn't mean that, I'm going to always have a great start, and it doesn't mean that I should aspire for a perfect start, and therefore if I don't get a perfect start, I shouldn't carry on playing, right? It comes with other challenges as well when you don't do so well, and this goes for life and work and everything in between as well. So like for me, if something doesn't work, you experiment, you change something, you make little micro adjustments in what you're doing, and you try something different out. And so along the way, I did start questioning some of the decisions I was making. I dropped Salah, very earlier on in this season when I brought him in. I lost a little bit of patience there, and then my wildcard, I'm bringing him back in. And so, this is where you sort of go, well, I'm not going to be stubborn about it. I didn't make a great decision there. I probably should have just held on to him. But in the same time, you can look at that objectively and go, well, I managed to spread the funds, and actually, that did help me at the time as well. So I guess you do question yourself, and you should question your decision-making process. You should question the environmental sort of aspects when you are making that decision as well. However, this time round, I was in the UK when I picked my team. I'd gone to FPL meets as well in London on deadline day, and I was actually flying out back to Australia that same evening. And so it was a bit of a crazy day and crazy week, in fact, as I was preparing to head back to Australia after 2 months abroad. But yeah, there was a whole bunch of factors that sort of led to, how I picked my team and the template at this point that I was going towards as well. But yeah, it's definitely uncharted waters that I'm sort of, navigating at the moment, but it's so exciting at the same time. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity to, chase the upside basically, and try and sort of make up some of those points and gains in different ways, playing it in a slightly, I wouldn't say a different way, but making adjustments where I can, and experiment. And so yeah, I'm a firm believer of, experimentation. If it doesn't work once, you try again and you try again, and you do it patiently, and not sort of chop and change too much as well. So not a different experiment every game week, but yeah, you chip away at it a little bit, over time, and hopefully some of those things will come off. And because I detach myself from the outcome, like from my first season, I've been very conscious about there's a bunch of decisions I'm making based on the data that's in front of me, or any other information, eye tests and things like that I'm making. But beyond that, the outcome is not in my control. If someone gets a red card, someone gets sent off, like any of those things that happen, that's beyond my control. But I can put my hand on my heart and say, I made the best possible decision based on what was there in front of me. And so that's my way of detaching myself from the outcome. And so when I watch the matches and, my FPL team is not doing well, I'm like, well, okay, it's because it's a game within a game for me. And so, having that detachment there is so important from an emotional perspective, and from a mental health point of view as well. And I've seen people get sort of sucked into that. So when you're not having a good season, it's really important to be talking about it as well. Like I started to make content in the worst season that I'm having in the time that I've been playing. And I think it's really important to do that. Like if we only share the good things, right? We're not sort of, humanizing the aspect of like where things go wrong and how you deal with that as well, whether that's negatively or positively or whatever it may be. I think it's important to communicate that, whether it's highs or lows.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, my season has got off to a pretty tragic start. And the first, and when you're just getting red arrow after red arrow, you think, oh, this is no fun at all. But over the last sort of couple of weeks, and actually since I've been having these chats as well, I've sort of completely flipped it and reframed it essentially. And now I'm looking at it as,
Mm,
so this is going to be a fun season, because imagine if I can bring it back. Imagine like where I am
exactly.
now, which is like, I think three, I got a green arrow, so I think it's 3.5 or something silly. But imagine if I get to, a decent, and then I could, all the learnings that you take, and that's a much better story than, getting in the top 10K for the first week and just grinding it out, So
That's
it's
it.
it's it's an
That's it.
opportunity, isn't it?
It takes, it's definitely brought out the competitiveness in me where I'm like, well, you know what? But at the same time, like Ben, you mentioned that you're like 3.5 mil. I'm around that as well at the moment. And instead of looking at it as how do I sort of gain a mil places or 2 mil places, I'm looking at it as, any step in the right direction is a good outcome and you should celebrate that as well. So whether it's, like I think the green arrow I got between game week 8 and sorry, game week 7 and game week 8 was only about 100,000 places. It's not much when you're 3 point something mil. But I was looking at that as I made progress there, and that's really good. And that's the thing that you've got to focus on as well, that you're making progress in the right direction.
Yeah, again, totally agree. The last few weeks, again, sort of this is more down to an attitude change than anything else, because the game is exactly the same. But whether you're on a red or green, there's always going to be a moment in your game week where a player does something in your team that's great, which gets you points. And
Mm,
it may even not make too much difference to the points in terms of your overall game week rank or anything like that. But those moments have to be celebrated, because if you're just, what I've realized is, if you're just hanging everything on your game week 38 rank, um, you're not going to be very happy for the majority of the season, and you're not going to enjoy the game. And I think the game is enjoying the game, um,
mm.
and whatever that means on that weekend. So, an assist from someone, it's like, yes, like celebrate that, because you don't know when the next nice moment is going to come along. And I just feel like, it sounds so silly, but like a weight has been lifted in terms of the way I'm playing and the way I'm sort of enjoying it, no matter what rank. Obviously, talk to me in a few weeks, and if I'm 7 million, I'll maybe
Yeah.
we'll see how we go. But it
I
has
might
been,
be I might be right up there with you.
maybe. But yeah, it does. Yeah, the pressures seems to be a bit off, I think, if you think of it like that.
I agree. And I think that's helped me to keep that perspective, and keep myself in check as well. And so, because I've been treating it as a hobby and a game, and not getting too sort of sucked into the outcome as well. And it's definitely helped me from a mental health point of view as well. I know that it's had a huge impact on many people. I've seen like over the last couple of seasons where people have taken breaks from FPL Twitter, for example. They've posted a tweet saying I'm going offline for a couple of months or something, and having my season is over. And I have to admit, I do sort of see those messages and think, oh gosh, that's really sad. But at the same time, they need the support as well. So I've often sort of reached out to an individual where I've connected with online and said, hey, look, my DMs are open. Be great. Like if you want to chat, would be great to chat. I'm here if you need to sort of get a different perspective or something like that. But it is tough. It is really tough. And I think even I've been sort of emotionally swept up into it as well. But yeah, it comes with challenges.
Well, it's an emotional game, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and yes, people on the outside, they obviously won't understand that, and that's fine. But it does, it hooks you in, and however much, I mean, you said a few minutes ago, however much you try and detach yourself from those decisions, it's a game, yeah, it can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster, can't it? Yeah. I think
Yeah.
actually I was speaking to Dan Davis, FBO Blackwolf, and we had and very, very sort of wise chap, and he put a different spin on it, because it's very simple, I think, for people when people tweet out or share that they're having problems with their mental health because of FPL. It's very simple to say, well, it shouldn't affect you that much. But what he was saying is that for some people, I'm incredibly lucky, and lots of people are incredibly lucky that FPL is important, but it's not the most important thing. You've got friends, you've got family, you've got other hobbies, to engage. But for some people, this game is a lot. That red or green arrow really does affect because of their wider environment and their wider life. So it's really it's kind of problematic to sort of say, well, it's only a game, because for some people it's a bit more than that, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is where, like, when I have reached out to a few people, over the last couple of seasons, it's been, because of that perspective, because, perhaps they don't have that much other things that are going on that are important to you, but it may not be, as important to them. And that's the thing, right? We can't project our perspective and our viewpoint on other people, and assume that my life is exactly what everyone else's life is going to be like. And so I think, yeah, it's a little bit naive to think that if it, yeah, it's such an interesting space, like from a especially from a mental health point of view, because there's days where I've had a really hectic week, or hectic day, and it's been so intense that sometimes you read something online, whether it's on Twitter or other sort of online sort of content consumption, and it could trigger you in different ways, right? And so it could be anything, and it happens to the best of us as well. So we just don't know what's going on in other people's lives in general.
Yeah, totally agree. So Mira, we're near the end of our conversation, but we've got two more questions. And as I said before rolling, and as I try and say on all these conversations, these podcasts, these chats are all about celebrating the wonderful game that we're lucky to play. So with that in mind, what is your favorite FPL moment? What is your champagne FPL moment?
Oh, I love that you called it a champagne FPL moment, because I think for me, the champagne FPL moment was last season. Um, Not because I had a good season last season, but I think there was a period where I had basically I wasn't watching matches. I was traveling, in between as well. There was actually lots of periods of where I wasn't watching matches. I wasn't really able to follow data properly, and I wasn't able to, sort of make decisions. And that kind of, I guess, reminded me that it's okay to not as well, and it's okay to not overthink things. It's okay to not consume too much content, that kind of stuff. But the champagne moment for me was game week 26 last season, where I think I everyone was trying to wildcard. I think everyone was looking at wildcarding, the second wildcard, game week 26, around 25, 26, 27 sort of, mark. And I had Salah in my team, and I think I had a couple of other Liverpool players as well. You can see my Liverpool bias, coming through ever so slightly again. But they were playing Man United, and I think they had Bournemouth coming up sort of shortly after, or something like that. And this was the absolute smashing that Liverpool gave to Man United. And I remember seeing in my timeline on Twitter, it seemed like everyone in the community was wildcarding, and I knew I needed to wildcard because the fixtures were swinging a little bit as well in the upcoming game weeks. But I decided against all sort of, all the conversations I was having. It was around, no, you should wildcard, just get the wildcard out of the way. Wildcard in 26, wildcard in 26. and I didn't. And mostly because I wanted to hold on to Salah, especially going into the Bournemouth fixture. But also I was like, no, I think Liverpool could do really well against Man United. And Salah picked up a brace and 2 assists in that. I think it was like 8-0, 7-0, 7-0. I think it was. But yeah, that's definitely my champagne moment last season where I didn't wildcard, and I wildcarded shortly after that. I think it was game week 28, but I'm glad that I held off when everyone else, it felt like everyone else was not, holding off, and then they played it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that's a perfect champagne moment, isn't it? Because yes, you've gone against people, and you've got it right. Yes, it's your own team, and that's in real life, and you're watching it, so you're seeing it coming as well. So rather than
Yeah.
notifications or searching for the score, so amazing, love that one. Thank you.
Yeah, it was so I'm pretty sure I woke up I went back to bed and woke up the next day, had a couple of like client meetings, and I was like, you know what, sod this, I'm gonna wear my Liverpool shirt. They're not gonna have a clue what's going on here. They're just gonna think, oh yeah, Mira's just super cash today for a Monday. But yeah, I rocked up wearing a Liverpool shirt and no one had a clue, but I did.
You did. That's the
I
main
did.
thing. Yeah, you knew. Excellent. Okay, so just to round off the chat, Meera, and once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really nice conversation.
Thank you.
And all your details about your awesome YouTube channel will be in the show notes. And anybody listening or watching this, really, I was watching some before I came on this. Actually, it's a really nice channel. So yeah, anybody listening to this or watching this, absolutely check that out. The final question is the best piece of FPL advice you've ever received?
So this is going to be coming across a little bit ironic,
Okay.
because obviously I've gone on the content sort of journey this season. However, the best FPL advice that I've been given is not to consume too much content. And this is where it's helped me immensely, last season especially. This season I've sort of got a select kind of few that I sort of I'll always go and watch, as a regular sort of on a regular basis. But in my first season I consumed so much content, like so many YouTubers that I was just watching day in day out, just because I was trying to learn the game, right? And so all of a sudden I did this like huge net of loads of absorption of FPL to understand the game, understand the rules, and sort of the nuances that come with playing it as well. And last season I dropped that down completely, so I went from one extreme to the other, and started focusing in on a few select content creators where possible, and because it gave me something different as well. So if I want something that's really stats heavy, data driven stuff, then I have a couple of content creators I would go for towards for those things. If I wanted a little bit more of that eye testy and just kind of gut feels and X vibes basically, then I've got a couple of content creators I like going to for that, and there's a few that sort of do a little bit in between. And most of the time I just like listening to sort of very casual conversations that some of the content creators are having as well. So I went from something like 30 different content creators that I was like consuming in my first season to maybe now less than 10. And
Mm.
so yeah, it's really refreshing to do that and sort of trust a few that you can go to and sort of tap into it occasionally. I found that really helped me. But yeah, so the best bit of advice that I got was actually from FPL Planner, and he's an Australian-based FPL manager, and one of the first Australian FPL managers that I met in person as well, who's based in Canberra. And I've learned lots from him, over the last couple of seasons. And he often reminds me on a regular basis, actually, that don't step away from that content, or step away from that YouTube channel, or step away from that and just give yourself a break from it. And it's such a nice reminder. And so now I've got just a few that I listen to and regularly sort of tap into. And then yeah, I created buckets, basically, the fun content, and then the data content, and then the a little bit of everything content. And it's made me a better FPL manager, I'd like to say.
Yeah, I like that. Just being a bit more selective, essentially, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Meera, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful chat. And I was going to say have a lovely evening ahead, but have a lovely morning ahead because now it's 8
Thank
a.m.
you.
roughly. So yeah, have a lovely
Yes.
one.
Thank you so much, Ben, and really appreciate being on your channel and your podcast as well. Yeah, very, very much appreciated. Thank you.